This is the Great Basin prescribed fire and weather briefing for Friday, February 21st. Looking at projects across the region, most of them in the central and southern areas where it has been driest overall. Precipitation the past 7 days, you can see it's been quite wet up in the north, a lot of half-inch to inch-and-a-half precipitation amounts. There's been also some recent precipitation in the south, but it's been kind of a drier donut hole in some central and southern areas. You can see the percent of normal of precipitation on the right-hand side. 100-hour fuels still driest in the low teens in the central and southern areas, and quite wet, more like 16 to 20% and higher, where you see the green and dark green. Of course, overall, looking at the past 2 months, we still are in a fairly high drought situation. This is the eddy, or the flash drought index that we have through here, quite moist in northern areas. And this is our latest snowpack, and overall, for about the northern two-thirds of the geographic area, we are near to even slightly above normal, but there is a drastic drop-off across the higher terrain and mountains of the southern third of the geographic area, especially the further east you go, where a lot of areas are 50, 40% of normal. Satellite imagery shows kind of a trough of low pressure centered over the Great Basin right now, starting to exit. There's a ridge of high pressure building in over the far western Great Basin. This is the satellite imagery as we have it right now. This is an experimental image. We'll see if we can fine-tune that before the start of fire season. But there's the ridge of high pressure building in on the upper level map. There are some clouds up here into this green area, but drier air where you see this tannish and reddish shade. Overall, dispersion, both vertical and horizontal combined, best in the south, where you see the areas in the white and some yellow, worse where you see the areas in red and especially the purple. Winds overall, strongest winds out of the north and northeast, where you see these green and dark green shades of about 15 to 20 miles an hour, but light winds elsewhere. And on the right-hand side is the minimum afternoon relative humidity. You see quite dry in the south, near 10% or lower. Significantly higher as you head further north, especially up in Idaho and Wyoming. Now, the transport winds, similar, of course, they're going to be a little stronger because they're not just at the surface. They incorporate the first few thousand feet of the atmosphere, and it actually incorporates the average winds in the mixing height, which is how far does the air mix or smoke rise before it starts pancaking out. And you can see with the areas in yellow and orange, that's about 3,000 to 4,000 feet in the south, but it's very close to the surface where you see the areas in the blue and purple. For tomorrow, high pressure building in across the east, much of the Great Basin. There's a weak front coming in from the north with some clouds, very little, though, in the way of any precipitation. Overall ventilation starts to decrease across most areas, especially in the south, as well as high pressure builds in. Light overall winds. Again, you see that dry humidity, similar in the south, but significantly higher once again in the north. Transport winds, again, fairly light this time in the south, but some decent winds starting to increase a little bit in that 5 to 15 mile an hour range the further north and west you go. Vertical mixing best in the south. And then on Sunday, there's another push of moisture through here. Most of the heavy precipitation will be up in the north, up in Idaho and Wyoming, and maybe far northern Nevada, but you can see the ominous moisture shield starting to move back in as the high pressure starts to yield and shift eastwards. Winds starting to pick up with that front, especially in northern areas, coming more out of the west and southwest, but light winds further south. And again, the very dry humidity levels at the surface in the south, significantly rising as you head further north, especially up in Idaho, where precipitation will likely ensue. Transport winds also quite strong as you get into northern Nevada and parts of western Idaho in the 20 to 30 mile an hour range. And as always usually with an approaching front, the vertical mixing starts to improve. So the 3-day precipitation totals with that moisture shield, that's what we're expecting on the third day as we go into Sunday probably. We'll see that moderate to locally heavy precipitation in the Idaho mountains, light precip down towards the Nevada border, and then not much further south or west of that. And then on Monday, there's still some spokes of moisture pushing on through. You see the ventilation or the overall dispersion on the right-hand side. And then as we go into Tuesday and Wednesday, big high pressure starts to build in, much warmer temperatures, and maybe some increasing clouds in the western Great Basin on the backside of that high by Thursday. Precipitation, this will be a Monday night through Wednesday night, and then Wednesday night through Friday night. Not much overall to be expected as high pressure builds in. 7-day precip totals, most of this will be in the first 3 days. And the 8 to 14-day outlook shows near to above normal temperatures across much of the geographic area. There is a signal that southern and eastern areas could see somewhat wetter conditions. We'll see how that plays out. This concludes our briefing. Next one coming up this Monday. Have a great weekend.